I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guests are Wayne McRoy and Richard Willett. Be sure and check out my films. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and many more. Booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Wayne McRoy and welcome Richard Willett. Wayne is an author, researcher, and co-host of the Synchromistic podcast. Richard is a filmmaker, director, video producer, journalist, and also co-host of the Synchromistic podcast. Wayne, Richard, welcome. How y'all doing?
Doing fantastic, Chris. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you both on, and you have both been doing such amazing work decoding the hidden nature of this strange realm that we're in. And today we're not only going to try and break down some of the mechanics of synchronicity and methods of manipulation by the hidden hand steering society, but Wayne, before we got on, you mentioned something called the Genesis Project, which I want to learn more about. Before we do, Richard, this is your first time on. Let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know how they can find out more.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me on. I've been doing this research for about 15 years now in terms of making content. I have a film and TV degree, so I worked quite in the mainstream, but I had kind of my foot in the door and realised that it wasn't quite what I thought it was. I always knew it wasn't anyway. In terms of what it was going to be, but I got a first-hand account of working at places like the BBC and thinking this is just horrific. So I was always learning this stuff, so I just started my own podcast, and this was way back, probably 10 years ago now. And then I met Gareth Ike, started working with Gareth, and we started Iconic together, me, Gareth, and Jamie, about 6.5 years ago now. And we've been doing that. So most of my work is on iconic.com. You can find all my documentaries there, on my weekly shows there. I do 2 weekly shows, and it's all the occult and esoteric stuff. So we kind of cover all sorts of spectrums on Iconic in terms of the alternative, but it goes from politics to deep stuff. And myself and David mostly do the deepest occult stuff. And then you kind of obviously get some kind of like new agey kind of, it's not quite new agey, but it is like out there kind of spiritual stuff, I suppose you could probably put it that way. And it covers all platforms, but it's all stuff you won't hear in the the mainstream alternative media and the mainstream media. So that's where I am. You can find me on iconic.com, and obviously I do a show with Wayne every couple of weeks called Synchromistic. We've known each other for about must be about 7 or 8 years now, doing stuff back and forth. And we started Synchromistic about a year and a bit ago, and it's just done really well. We when we do get a chance to get together and actually chat about these things, but these are at a level where most people don't understand in terms of what they're actually seeing, and it's absolutely everywhere. And the whole point is to show people there's a language here that you're seeing every day around you all the time that you just have been told, you have not been told how to decode, and it's everywhere. So that's what we do, and I learn a lot from Wayne as well through the years. I've got all his books, and I'm a big fan of Wayne's work just as a writer and as a researcher. So, but I've been doing this. I'm a documentary filmmaker really, but more kind of got into this sort of stuff about 10-15 years ago. So that's iconic.com is where you can find all my stuff.
Excellent. And you mentioned the deeper levels of what's unfolding in this reality, and this show is definitely all about that. My audience is pretty versed with the basics. Before we get into this, Wayne, briefly reintroduce yourself for the audience that may not be familiar and let them know how they can find out more about you.
All right. Well, people could find all of my work centralized on my website. That's www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. If you're not familiar with my work, I delve very heavily into the occult and the esoteric side of things and try to bring to the surface what is actually going on in this reality around us. Because, as Richard alluded to here, it's encoded everywhere. They communicate through this language of symbolism, and it's out there everywhere. And more recently, Richard's been fantastic at picking up the concepts that I've laid down. We've been decoding what I call the synchromystic metadata that is out there in the greater zeitgeist, the information field. And we're able to actually obtain information about things going on by using that methodology. And what this is this equates to symbolic things out there that we see round about us every day. And it's kind of like a hidden communication tool for those in the know, in the high echelons of the occult fraternities of this world, the ones that really control things and run things from behind the veil. Those that I call the dark occultists who run things in this world. This is how they communicate ideas. This is how they implant ideas into the collective unconscious mind and leverage our own mental energies against us to bring to fruition the agendas that they want to have play out in this world. And they are doing this once again, as I had spoken to you off air just prior to the broadcast, with what is called the Genesis Project, or the Genesis Mission, that the White House has recently launched in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Energy. And what this is this is an executive order to make a historic national effort led by the Department of Energy to transform American science and innovation through the power of artificial intelligence. So this is all about building a new artificial intelligence infrastructure in the U.S. and in the world to come. And of course, this harkens to the building of what I call the beast system. And there are many people who have touched upon many of these things in the past. We see how it all begins to manifest in a way where it brings to fruition things talked about in scripture and things predicted in various other places throughout the course of time. So we have all of these connection points with this. This is the fruition of something big, something transformative to society and culture in general. And we're sitting at the precipice right now of a crossroads in society. And Richard and I have touched upon this crossroads in past broadcasts of Synchro Mystic. I think we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of the launch of Synchro Mystic, and we've had a great response to that. Even though it started out a little slow in the beginning, it's been snowballing every month now as we do this. And we only get together about twice a month because Richard's busy, I'm busy. It's hard to really coordinate things from across the pond, but we do our best, and everybody always seems to react very positively when we put these shows out there for them to understand and decode the synchromystic metadata. I think it's an important concept, and it's an important idea for people to look into, because you could have a better grasp of what the reality is by knowing how to decode this and what it is they're talking about. And what this goes back to is the secret language of these occultists and these people that really run things behind the scenes. And sometimes it translates over into political ideologies, and we see that all the time in world events. So when they're talking about certain things, if you know the key words to look for and know the roots of where this stuff comes from, then you could better understand what they're talking about. And one of the primary conduits they use for communicating these ideas is the Kabbalah, the Lorianic Kabbalah. And Richard and I have delved very heavily into this. And you see these stories out there in the mainstream media all over the place that convey these hidden meanings, and most people don't pick up on it. Like Richard just recently did a story about the number 600,000. So, Richard, could you elaborate a little about that for Chris?
Yeah, the 600,000. I mean, that pops up everywhere. We had an article came out about the farmers and how they're taking away, obviously, all the work from farmers, and they would have to pay £600,000 in tax, which obviously is not the real number. But the point is that that's the coded. This is part of the agenda. Now, the 600,000 number is the amount of sparks or shards, the iron soft or the Adam Cadman, which is the whole entity of what was originally the original one, you would call it, exploded into when they tried to create space to create something else. So it retracted itself. This is Lurianic Kabbalah. It retracted itself, and in doing so, because it was so powerful, it exploded. Now, all these 600,000 sparks, these elements, think of them as shattered glass, falling to the earth. So you have these fallen angels and the Nephilim, that kind of connotation, falling to the earth. They became encased in husks, which they call Klepoth, which are the nasty husks, or Seraphot, which are the nice husks. I wonder what husks we are. Yeah, exactly. We're Klepoth to this cult. So the 600,000 sparks, they call it Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. There's a lot in this. I'll try and cram it in. Repairing the world, Tikkun Olam in Lurianic Kabbalah or Sabbatean Frankism is about reuniting those sparks into the one. It's the reversal. It's the Great Reset. It's the singularity. It's all bringing it back to one. It's collapsing it and starting it again. But those sparks, so when you see the eternal flame, so JFK, when he was assassinated, Princess Diana, when she was assassinated, what did they put there to memorialize it? The eternal flame. Because they see that as we've released their eternal sparks. I'm sure Diana and JFK didn't see it that way, but they do. That's how they kind of apologize to themselves for killing people. They see they're doing the world a favor. They're repairing the world. And people need to understand this is not just a Jewish thing. This is a Sabbatean, Lurianic, Kabbalistic thing. Sabbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank, who later took on his work, they were Lurianic Kabbalists. So this is a cult. This is a death cult. So by killing you, they're releasing you into life. And that goes into Gnosticism, has elements of that. Not to say any of these systems are bad, are evil. They get hijacked, infiltrated by Sabbateanism, sabotage. So the 600,000 is a reference to the sparks that will go back, and that goes into the golden age of Saturn and all of this stuff that you see Trump. And this is mostly seen, most obvious even, in the likes of the Chabad Lubavitch sect in Brooklyn that also aren't anything to do with the Middle East. They're Ashkenazim. These are Sabbatean Frankists at their very core. I'm not saying every single one of them is. I'm saying at the very core, they are clearly Sabbatean Frankists and not Jewish. They're not using the Jewish faith and elements of different faiths to create this construction. They're in the Christian faith, they're in the Islamic faith, they're in Silicon Valley, they're in the Knights Templar, the Knights Malta. They sabotage and corrupt everything within like a virus. So that's how they operate. And what they do is, and then when you start to see this understanding, so you go, okay, they do that, they sabotage. So what do? Well, they hide themselves inside husks of other organizations, Klepoths. Seraphot, whatever they want to call it, because they use these elements and this psychology of understanding that actually when the Rothschilds call themselves Red Shield, what they're saying is, I'm going to use the Jewish faith as a shield to hide within, and whenever you try and attack us, we're going to use the anti-Semitic thing, even though Semitic means a group of languages largely Arabic, which would be the Palestinians. Even then, they'll turn it inside out, satanic. Because at their very core, these guys are satanic. They're not... Sabbatean is one level. And if it's like peeling an onion, like we've discussed this, me and Wayne, peeling an onion skin back, you get the Sabbatean layer off. You've got the satanic layer, the death cult layer. When it comes back to it, there's these different layers that they hide within. And like I'm not religious at all, and you know, we which is what's great about me and Wayne working together, is that we have completely different sets of beliefs, but we respect each other as human beings who want to make the world better for our kids. But by their fruits you will know them is who can argue with that? So you know these people by their fruits. So just before I'll stop rambling in a minute. Tommy Robinson over here in the UK with the digital ID. I've just put a video out about it. Now he's going over there to kiss the wall in Israel. He's clearly an Israeli firster. He's over here pushing the Islam, everybody hates Islam type thing over here in the UK. I know Donald Trump's doing the same in America. They're the same because they're part of the same cult. Now, what that does is pulls the polarities into a position where the British public and the American public do what? They beg for digital IDs. And that's exactly what's happening here in the UK. And we have something in the UK, which is, this is even sicker, using something called the Veterans Pass is the first one going to be used in the UK. So I'm sorry, UK. So they're using the veterans here in the UK, the same poor sods they sent off to war to kill each other for them. They actually using it called the Veterans Pass, and it's going to be the first digital pass in the digital wallet. And they're saying, because people are asking, you're not using Palantir, are you, for the digital wallet? Well, like, no, we're not. We're not working with any outside corporations. It's all in-house. But when you see the digital pass, they're working with the Ministry of Defence for that digital pass, the first card in the digital wallet. Think it is your first bank card in your wallet. They're working with the Ministry of Defence. About 3 months ago, they signed a £1.5 billion deal with Palantir to run AI across London. So they're coming in the side door, using the same poor sods that went to war for them, lost their lives, and ushering it that way because they know the British public will go, well, if it's good enough for the troops and the veterans, it's good enough for us. And then the likes of Tommy Robinson and the guys that go over and kiss the wall in Israel can usher it out here and gaslight people into, got to do it because all these Muslims are coming over. It's so obvious. And when you realise the Saudi royals aren't royals, they are Sabbatean Frankists and Ashkenazim, you realise that one of the Kingdom Holdings has shares in XAI Holdings Corp. And Qatar National Sovereign, or the Qatar Sovereign Fund has, which is the national, it's the same thing. The National Trust and the Sovereign Fund is the same thing when you look at it. So what is Elon Musk doing in bed with the Saudi royals and the Saudis if he hates Islam and it's all a problem? Because... And then obviously you have the Palantir connection with Elon Musk. So we go into all of that, and that's on the political level. But when you really come underneath it, there is this language that you understand that once you tune into it, you see it everywhere, and you can pick up on their signs, symbols. 600,000 is a code for them, a nod and a wink, like the rainbow. But anyway, I'll stop waffling on now.
Right on.
But that was a long-winded way of saying that.
You're spot on when you were discussing the layers of agendas and occult symbolism, what's really being represented under the surface. Going back to the Genesis project, I'm sure it's the same with this, many layers to peel through. As far as what's unfolding right now related to this, Wayne, we'll start with you. Talk a little bit more about this and the deeper layers as we go.
All right. Well, the Genesis project, of course, they're invoking the language of the Bible of creation, of building a whole new world, Genesis. And this just came out from the White House, released as an executive order where the president is ordering X amount of dollars. I think it's something to the tune of $100 million or something like that. 100 billion, excuse me, $100 billion to go into the building of AI infrastructure in the U.S. And of course, he announced this right after being reelected again as president back in January or February or some such thing. And this was announced in conjunction with Sam Altman and Larry Ellison and all of those guys talking about the Stargate project, AI Stargate. And the Stargate, Richard and I have discussed this in the past on Synchromystic again. You are the Stargate. The human being is the Stargate. We are the connection, the link between worlds. And the whole agenda here smacks of transhumanism. That's exactly what they're trying to set up, this infrastructure for transhumanism. And it all has to do with data collection, building these massive AI data centers as the starting off point for this, so that they could collect all of your genetic and biometric information, your medical records, everything, all centralized into one AI-driven utility where the AI will be in charge and there's no accountability. And either you will participate in the system or you will be locked out of society. And this is the beast system. We've seen this discussed in the book of Revelation and in the Bible. So we have all of this starting to come online now. And now we're seeing the real world nuts and bolts building of this infrastructure, because the whole idea, the whole concept, is all about attaching man to the digital neocortex, the digital layer of this reality that they intend to build. And what is this digital layer? Well, They tried rolling it out back in the early part of the whole COVID scamdemic they pulled on us, and they were calling it metaverse. You remember all the metaverse push? Zuckerberg had to walk away from metaverse as the actual buzzword because people weren't actually latching onto it the way that they had intended that they would. So this hasn't gone anywhere. They're still building this new generation of internet web 3.0 services and technologies that essentially are the metaverse. What this is really all about is building a synthetic digital sublayer of this reality. And essentially what this is a cheap knockoff, a synthetic version of a thing that exists in nature. When you go into some of the occult teachings, looking back to the nature of manifestation and consciousness and all of those things, you find that this world we live in has an etheric sublayer. The etheric sublayer is a portion of the physical plane in which we live, but it is of a finer grade of matter. And we've only just begun to touch into this. If you look at the Rosicrucian system, they explain it like this. We understand matter in its states of existence. We have solid, liquid, and gas. And now we have plasma. Mm-hmm. The Rosicrucian system says there are 7 different layers or 7 different states of matter that exist. Now, from plasma on up, touches into this etheric portion. It's a finer grade of substance. It is less dense than the dense physical chemical region in which we exist. This is what these controllers of this world are trying to tap into. They're trying to build a synthetic etheric sublayer because this has everything to do with how manifestation works when you go back into the old occult sciences. It's a stepping down process from the spiritual realms into the physical, and that gateway is this etheric layer. The first step of physical manifestation in the dense chemical region in which we live steps through this etheric sublayer. So to perform changes or make changes in this world, it has to step down through the etheric first. So an idea generates in the divine world or the world of the mind, the mental plane, steps down through the astral and into the etheric first before it manifests physically in the world that we know and we can view with our 5 senses. This is all part of how manifestation of a thing works within the Rosicrucian system. The Rosicrucians explain it the best, in my view. I've looked at this from all different angles and perspectives and from different traditions. They all tell you the same things, but sometimes the language varies a little and it gets a little confusing and muddled. So I try to stick with the Rosicrucian system because I find it gives me the most clarity, as it's more attuned to Western ideologies rather than Eastern ideologies. This is the Western esoteric stream of alchemical thought, as opposed to the Eastern. Now, you have people like the Theosophists who picked up on the Eastern, tried to gel it together with the Western, and things become muddled and don't make sense. And they do this on purpose because then they apply the inversion process to what the true intention is of these things, and they invert it. And I will always tell people, and I maintain this, the true definition of Satanism is the inversion principle. They use it all the time. It's the inverse of what the original intention has been. So anyway, not to ramble on too long, essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to hijack this process of manifestation from the etheric to the physical plane here, the physical dense chemical region that we live in. And in order to do that, they're trying to take a shortcut by building a synthetic etheric layer so that they can program whatever changes they want into that etheric sublayer to manifest physically here in the real world that we see and experience with our 5 senses.
It seems like another part of this is that they require at least a large portion of the masses to participate in the agendas, the ritual, in order for it to come to fruition, or at least go along with it in a sense that we allow it to unfold by going along with the agendas, believing in operations like COVID and fear factor, high impact events that have unfolded. It seems like those are required for us to have a reaction to allow these events to manifest into our reality. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely, it is. This falls back to the old Hermetic principle of mentalism. All manifests from mind. It begins from mind, from thought, and steps down into physical creation here, into reality, into manifestation from that. So they're trying to hijack your thinking process, first of all, to empower the agendas that they want. So certainly that does hold true. And think of it this way. If you want to look at it from a more nuts and bolts perspective here in the world of science that we're used to, or scientism, I would more rightly call it, but these concepts, they do have their place in their usage. But here's how you could think of it. Your perception is your reality. So if you could convince enough people something's real, does it not in essence become real? Look at COVID as an example. Enough people bought into it that it's actually entirely transformed the world. And even though the evidence of it was very scarce in the beginning, they used this to actually build this type of egregore around it, and it's taken on a life of its own. This is how they do things. It's all about the thoughts, the thought forms being generated from the minds of the masses. If enough people are thinking into this, and this is something I've done recently, I've done a couple podcast episodes now about the egregore, the nature of an egregore and what that is. And this plays heavily into a lot of the things we look at too. So if you're focusing your thoughts and your energy into this thing, you're giving a type of spirit or manifestation to it. And it takes on a life of its own, and it begins to affect other people. Now you could look at the whole idea of the 100th monkey effect as an example of this. So ideas can catch on without people necessarily discussing them among themselves, because of the nature of how the thought form goes out, takes on a type of life essence of its own, and then begins to affect other people out there in this greater information field, the zeitgeist, if you will. That's what I like to call it. And sometimes it manifests as this synchromystic metadata that I'm talking about. And it can implant ideas or archetypes and perhaps emotions into people's minds or thought processes. And this is what they really thrive on, especially the more negative emotional responses. It's all about actually affecting your animal nature, your reactive nature. They don't want people to ever think critically about a thing. They just want people to react. That is why they oftentimes will use emotional trauma and generating fear and things like that to evoke a response from people. That's all they're looking for. They want people in this reactionary state, because that falls back to the limbic system, or the animal brain, the reptilian brain. And this, of course, always has a lot of connotation attached to it, too. So these are just more layers of the onion we're peeling off. So this whole Genesis project is evoking that thought form, that nature of Genesis. It's about creating something new, but there's nothing new under the sun, the Bible advises us. So this is the same old New World Order, like always. That's what I like to call it, because you see it emerging everywhere. It's always these same playbooks that they use. It's the same blueprint. And once you know how to read it, it kind of gets tiresome for you, and you see it everywhere, like Richard alluded to. You could see their language that they're using. They put it out there in plain sight. But if you don't understand what they're saying, that's on you. And that's the way that they perceive this whole thing.
Richard, anything to add about this language, about the synchronistic nature of the mechanisms of this?
It's fascinating once you can read it. Like, let's have an example of I mean, the Genesis project is it's a clear example, but let's have a look at grok. What the grok means, if you look at the actual meaning of it, it means understanding, or to understand, which is binah on the Kabbalah tree of life. They've always telling you. So the whole point is to understand. So the whole point is to understand. It doesn't understand anything, obviously, but it alludes to it. It's a synthetic function of it, but it's not real true understanding. If you look at, and this is the big one for me, was data. An anagram of data is deat, DAAT. Dayat. It's the hidden, I think, 11th Sephirot on the Kabbalah tree of life. It's the hidden knowledge. Dayat is hidden knowledge. So what is it for? What do they get off you when you use your computer and do anything? They get the hidden knowledge of what you've done and when you've done it, and they harvest that. So they are harvesting your hidden harvesting, sorry, the harvesting, it's hard to say, your data to know exactly what you're doing. Therefore, they can read your mind or play on exactly what you've done and see the way you react. And it's stuff that you don't say. So they see it as reading your mind, which is obviously not still the same. It's a simulation of that, but it's not that. And they know it's not truly that. It can never be truly that, but they can simulate it. And if you're convinced enough by what you see out in the world, you'll think that they're reading your mind. It's hidden knowledge. It's hidden from them as well. They'll like you to believe that they're these magical magicians. They just understand psychology, which is really understanding the way human nature works and the nature of reality is, which is the same thing. So Dayat is a great example of them having this hidden language. What is great about it, and I've said this to Wayne, and I said this on my shows, is the real good thing is that they have to stick to this language, because this is how they've communicated for thousands of years. So once you've decoded this language, there's no going back for them. They can't suddenly start to change the language they talk to each other. It's too embedded in their beast system. So you can decode this language, and that's why myself and Wayne do what we do. We do it to show you what they're actually saying to each other. We do it, and then you can go, well, I ain't going to go along with that. That's ridiculous. And then you start to see it everywhere. Then, like learning a new language, you start to learn it, and it snowballs, and you're like, this is bloody obvious. I was watching Stranger Things last night. We all know that's an MK Ultra kind of Montauk project thing. But, I mean, it gets ridiculous to the point where the tree in Upside Down world is the Kabbalah tree of life, tipped upside down, and it's so bloody obvious. And then they've even got a bit in the middle where they all do in season 5 where it used to be the library, so it was the information port, where it was black and white flooring, obviously the checkerboard from Freemasons, and now it's in this world where it's all cornered off in season 5. It's the radio station. It's where the information's being spread out, but it's all still checkerboard floors, and they show you that everywhere. I was watching another Christmas film with a guy in it, and they had an emporium with kids. I can't remember what the film was called because my wife was watching it with the kids, and I didn't actually know what it was called. It had Dustin Hoffman in it, and they had this toy shop, and in the corner this grey-black mould started growing up the walls, and it grows straight over, and one of the doors starts pounding, and the door that starts pounding is clearly Solomon's temple, the front door with the 2 pillars on it. It's in everything. But the good thing is that they have to speak this knowledge, and they are proving us right. So they are actually undoing themselves every time they do something, because the people like us, yourself included, the people like David Icke, the Jordan Maxwells of the world, the I can't remember some older ones, the Max Egans of the world, some ones that have been around a lot longer than I have, and even Alex Jones to a certain degree before he was compromised. Although I think he's always been CIA, quite frankly. If you look at his family history, it's quite obvious. They did a lot to lay the foundation work, whether they were intending to or not, it depends. And I've just seen you've got the Kabbalah tree of life behind you there, which is upside down in upside down world, basically in Stranger Things. It's everywhere, and it's fascinating to read it, and you see it in the news, the numbers, 600,000. They don't count the zero as a thing. So they could be 6,000, it could be 60,000, it could be 600,000. It's the same code to them because they work between the 1 and the 9. And the 1 and the 0, what's that? Binary. So you start to see this 11, the 11 Sephirot is outside that binary 1 and 0. 9/11. 9/11 was supposed to be the same, just for example, supposed to be the same date in which the first two temples were sacked in the biblical text. What are the chances? I mean, it's ridiculous. So then 9/11 happens and the Twin Towers come down, which are Yakin and Boaz, and you have that IXXI, which is the sigil of Saturn, which you see on the Balmoral crest in Scotland of the British Royals, or not British. It's a cult. And you have all of these people, all these Freemasons, they want to rebuild the third temple, and then you start to see, obviously, the Middle East and what's happening there is the Greater Israel Project is really this Sabbatean death cults playing out biblical prophecies, or whichever way you see it, which is the Project New American Century. That's one olive skin or onion skin over the top. Another one is the Greater Israel Project. That's another onion skin over the top of what really is a messianic agenda. Then you've got the Freemasons. They're wanting to build Solomon's Temple with Hiram Abiff and all of these guys. Another skin over the top. It's the same thing, but as Wayne was alluding to, they're trying to manifest it in this world. So they're going through these different layers. And it's almost like I'm speaking a language I don't need to speak to you guys. Because there's a format and a blueprint to this, and I can give it words and I can build the walls around it and I can make it. I don't really need to do that because I know you guys understand. And once enough people understand what they're seeing, they can see the patterns in everything. And that's all we're doing is decoding patterns. And that's why we do what we do, because they're only ever going to prove us right. And they know that. The faster they go, the harder they go. They are running out of time. That's why they're terrified of Kronos, old father time, Satan, Santa. They're terrified. And I've got a book coming out called I'm Immortal, and it's all about why they're scared of dying. They're scared of their God, Yahweh, who's the evil creator God from the original Old Testament, who's Yaldabaoth in Gnosticism, who's this creator God, evil creator God. They're terrified of that being. They don't like that being. They're scared of that being, because what's happening is they're running out of time. And they're running out of time. Why? Because we are waking up to what they're doing. And it's this kind of duality, but ours is going up and theirs is going down. And they've convinced people that ours is going down when theirs is going up, and it's not. And I am very kind of enthusiastic about the future in that sense, because, well, we're probably a few hundred years out of them getting this thing in real technologically in motion. And they are nowhere near. And we are waking people up very, very quickly. So that's why it's important to do what we're doing and just learn to read the signs, because once you grab a hold of that thread of understanding, you will start to learn the language without understanding what the words mean. You just feel it.
What are your thoughts on the stranger aspects of predictive programming that we see associated with high-impact events? A good example is the recent Charlie Kirk assassination, the film Snake Eyes, the strange connections, the symbolism that shows in the films years before. This also can be said about Back to the Future and 9/11 and many other high-impact events that are reflected either in cinema, literature, or some other form of entertainment before the event unfolds. Is very interesting to me how the mechanics of this would work. What is your understanding of that?
I'll just jump in a little bit, Wayne, just say, because I only got brief sort of, Wayne knows more about this. But to me, it's a cybernetic system, as Wayne says. So they've basically plugged this information into the loop somewhere, and filmmakers have made these films probably even subconsciously, not really thought about this. This information's in the loop. So they're bringing it into the realm and stepping it down the realities into this realm. And I'm not saying they're predicting the future, but in a way they're predicting the future by actually going about and physically putting these information out there, these stories out there. So they can work one way. It can either the story comes first and then the action comes, or the action comes and the story comes. Doesn't matter. Circle is a circle. So they understand how to inject this information, DAT, hidden knowledge, into the cybernetic loop. And they need us. And the real important thing that Wayne has always pointed out is they need us to do this. We are the Starlink. They cannot do it without us. So they can't destroy us without us destroying ourselves. So we just need to wake people up to realize that you've been plugged into a loop here.
Wayne, what are your thoughts?
Well, Richard is 100% correct in how he's actually presenting this. This is a concept that Michael Hoffman and the late James Shelby Downard titled Revelation of the Method. And what this does is it kind of works in a freeze and thaw type of a situation where they introduce an idea, and if you go back and you look at some of the metaphysics of how manifestation occurs, Absolutely. It comes from first the idea in the thought world or the mental plane, stepping down through the different realities here through the astral plane and through the etheric, and then it manifests physically in the physical. So this is all the hearkening process of pulling the thought down, drawing down the thought or the idea into physical manifestation. So they present it in the form of entertainment to begin with, because what does entertainment mean? To go in and grab hold of the mind. Now remember the whole Hermetic principle of mentalism that we discussed earlier. Your mind, your thought precedes reality. So once they've grabbed hold of your mind, they've entrained an idea into your mind and they've presented it out there into the greater information field that I call the zeitgeist. So now this begins to gather energy. And sometimes it's a very long process. So this thought form is out there. It gathers energy from the thoughts of people observing that thing, that idea that's been presented. And through the course of time, it eventually starts to build a real world, quote unquote, body for lack of better terms here. And then it comes to manifestation later. Now, like I said, Michael Hoffman and James Shelby Downard called this revelation of the method, because they always tell you ahead of time how things are going to play out. And essentially, it's kind of like presenting a blueprint to you for some type of an event or action sequence. So this is how it comes to fruition here. And it does hearken on the science or the scientific discipline of cybernetics. And I've torn this apart ad nauseum in many of my books, because this is the important thing to understand. They hijack this feedback loop system in the information field. So they apply cybernetics methodologies to do this, to implant ideas, and it hasn't always been called cybernetics. I mean, these things have been around from time immemorial, but now they've kind of quantified it into a scientific discipline called cybernetics. So what they do is they introduce these new ideas into the cybernetic feedback loop, and it circles around and begins to empower itself, and it comes back later. So this is something that perhaps this would probably take an entire other show to actually go through the process of cybernetics, how it all works and stuff like that. I've done presentations on this in the past, because this is exactly what they do. They've developed an entire workable system that utilizes this principle, and they're trying to apply that to the greater information field, the zeitgeist, and they've been successful in doing that. These are your social engineers and social programmers of the world. They put these ideas out there, and sometimes, this is my view, I think a lot of this comes from a beyond human intelligence, from outside the system that's trying to manifest something here. So many of these ideas will present themselves as a type of inspiration to, say, a filmmaker or a writer or something like that. And they'll actually go ahead and they'll develop a script based upon this, not realizing that their inspiration is coming from some external source that has an agenda and wants to build something or manifest something into this reality later. And a major conduit for this is science fiction. Mm-hmm. Because yesterday's science fiction is today's science fact. There's a reason for that. This is how they build things. They hijack a portion of the human imagination. And this is one of the things that makes human beings unique in this world. We are made in the image of God. Well, what does that mean? It means we are lesser creators. So we have imagination, and that's something that, first of all, the AI lacks. It lacks imagination. That's why it needs to actually hijack the human form, the human function. That's why they need this transhumanist movement that they're pushing so hard for. They need the human imagination to empower or build the things they need built. They have no actual creativity of their own. They have no imagination of their own. And a lot of this has been described as the archons. So this is the same thing that goes on in the Gnostic teachings. And that's why these ideas have actually resonated for as long as they have. So anyway, there's all of that.
So I just looked at something when you were talking about that, Wayne, in science fiction. Now look at this. This is a great example of synchronistic metadata. Now, So I was looking at fict. What does fict mean? I always go to Hebrew because it seems to be attached to Hebrew. So fict is not a Hebrew word, but it's likely a typo for fiction. But the Hebrew word chet, spelled Chet, is actually pronounced like is fict. Checked is spelled like that. And fict, so chet, but pronounced checked, like fiction, means sin.
Huh.
That's synchronistic metadata playing out right in front of you. Fiction. If you meant to ask about Hebrew fiction, you can find many modern movies and stories written in Hebrew. If you are thinking about the Hebrew letter, so it's a letter, not word, sorry, I was wrong. Letter, chet, Chet, which is pronounced fect. It sounds very similar to fict, and it means sin. That's synchronistic metadata working in real time in front of you. Because I just had that. Let's just check what that fict means. And I knew it would come up with something. Well, it means sin. So science, sin, shin.
Sounds like is like. This is another thing that escapes most people. This is actually called the phonetic Kabbalah, by the way. Most people are unaware that there are multiple forms of Kabbalah, and they're all spelled slightly differently, and they all have different meanings and teachings attached to them. This is the phonetic Kabbalah that Richard is speaking of. And just to put out there, so people aren't thinking we're just making stuff up. This isn't us making stuff up. This is a system that has existed throughout the occult fraternities from time immemorial. It's known as many things. It's known as the phonetic Kabbalah. It's known as the language of the birds. The Masons call it the green language. This is an important trope. A lot of people might call it etymology. It's important to know where
Twilight language is another one, isn't it, Wayne?
Twilight language. That's what a lot of modern researchers call it, twilight language. It's the language of the gypsies. All of these things, these connotations are all attached to this. This is the phonetic Kabbalah. It's a programming language. The English language is built around this programming. Because if you look at the etymology of words in English especially, you will find oftentimes they mean something entirely different than how we use them today. And they use and invoke this all the time, especially in their news stories and things of that nature that we get out there. And this is one of the key facets of looking at it. So you have to look at word origins. So just so people understand, this is not something that we're making up out of thin air. There's an actual science behind it. There's actual history to it. And learning to decode or decipher that green language, as the Masons call it, is very important. And oftentimes they'll actually utilize symbols representing that to the people so that they know, anybody in the know could look at it and say, okay, they're using the green language here, the language of the birds. A perfect example of this would be this past year's Super Bowl. And I've done an extensive work on the Super Bowls. Well, who won the Super Bowl? The Eagles, the green bird, the green language, the language of the birds. So they were telling you in no uncertain terms, there's some hidden meaning to the things surrounding the big game, the Super Bowl, the superb owl, the language of the birds, you see. And that's why they always use that event as a major programming hub for a particular year. So I've been working, trying to reverse engineer this programming language. And Richard's been working with me on this, and I think we're getting better at it because we could pick out what it is they're communicating and make future predictions based on that.
A lot of people...
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that bit. Sorry, fiction. The first bit was fict, so that was sin. Chicked is spelt, but checked is spelt, but it's pronounced fict. The second bit is ion, which is iron, Ayein, and that means either eye or fountain. So you've got sin fountain or sin spring or the sin hidden eye. So this is the language, as Wayne was saying, this is really important to understand this stuff. That's why there's layers to this stuff. And it's a feeling. So I just wanted to jump that in there. That was just a real good example, I think, of me. I didn't have a clue about any of that till just 10 minutes ago. But I know what I know when I find it. And that's how it's hidden.
This...
Just to add more context to what Richard is saying here, sin, if you look at the word sin, if you go back to the Romance languages, Spanish, French, Latin, Sin in Spanish means without. So without, and the connotation is there, without the divine spark, without God, without the spiritual. And that's what that is leading to. Sin, science, without God. They're trying to leave God out of the equation, the creator out of the equation of everything. And this is exactly why we need to understand this stuff. And like Richard said, sometimes your intuition just tells you, you know what, I should look up the meaning of that word, the original etymology. And you'd be shocked and surprised at how many times that something that you intuit in that way is actually very accurate when you look into the details of the origin of the word. And this is how they utilize this phonetic Kabbalah, this green language, as a programming tool, because the human unconscious mind recognizes the archetype, the source behind it, and acts upon that in a subconscious way, whether we realize it on a conscious level or not. So this is bringing the unconscious or the subconscious to the conscious level. And when we do that, we're less affected by their programming cues that they put out there for us. So that's the importance of this.
Richard, you were saying how they put forward these illusions to get you to believe that they are all powerful magicians and they have control of everything. They do a pretty good job of that, because there are many that do believe that we are on a prison planet controlled by these negative forces, and even in the afterlife, we are recycled back to do it all over again and be food for these archonic forces. That is a very dark perspective for me to continue on with, so I haven't adopted that perspective. I think that there is good, there is light, there is something benevolent beyond these dark forces. But as far as your understanding of how deep it goes, how much control these forces have, is it all encompassing? Is there a way out? Is there hope in any of this? And I'll let you both speak to that.
I don't subscribe to that either, but what I will say is that it is whatever you perceive it to be. If you feel like you're trapped, then you are trapped. Say someone sends me to prison, but I find out all 60 of my best mates are in the prison. Is it a prison? Or are we just having a nice holiday? Like, it doesn't make sense. So it really depends on how you perceive it. So some people would see this, if you had the Gnostic thing, as a prison planet. I don't, but I respect other people that do. I feel like if it was a prison, well, I've come here to I've broke into the prison for a laugh and to annoy the archons. Yeah. So I actually put that on stage when I was on stage with David, because I do a lot of lives with David Icke. And I said, like, if this is a prison, I'm in here to annoy him.
That's great.
And because it's not prison to me. I've got my little boys here. You know, you can tell me I'm in prison. I don't need to act as if I'm in prison. I don't need to psychologically take that into. So I'm the same as you. I don't think it's a healthy way to look at the world. I get that. I get that some people do. Just for me, it's like, you know, and I'll be recycled back in here and all of this stuff. And it's like, I get why people believe them sort of things, but I also think that I'm as free as I think I am in that very moment. And regardless of where you put me, it's like the old song, you'll always take the weather with you. If I'm a miserable bastard in this world, I'll be a miserable bastard whether you recycle me back in or not. It doesn't matter. I'm deciding whether I'm trapped or not. And I think that's a healthier way. It's a more powerful way of me, maybe, you know, it's coping. We're all bloody coping anyway. None of us really know what's going on. I don't believe any single person has ever known where we come from or where we go after we die. We have hopes, we have faith, faith is really important. Faith is strength, faith is courage. I have faith in humans, in you guys. I have faith in me. I have faith that people will do the right thing. I even have a faith in the whole Yaldabaoth story, if that was ever true, that no wonder the guy's pissed off. His mum had him and discarded him. What an horrible thing to do for your child. You've had it off with no one. I don't know how that works. And then you've had a baby. And then you've gone, oh, probably should have done that. That was against the rules. And then you've discarded the baby. No wonder the baby's pissed off. So you can have empathy for that. I'm like, I'll be annoyed if so he's created his own world. If you want to go into that realm of Yaldabaoth creating your world, doesn't mean he's a nice person and you want to live in that world. So, because he's got trauma. So, but trauma perpetuates in the cybernetic loop. So I don't buy into that because I don't think it's psychologically very healthy. I believe that I am here for a reason, and it's probably just to annoy people and decode this weird shit. But when you walk, when we all go into the same room, I just don't find I find life really funny and stupid and weird. And I have anxieties all day long. I suffer from, like, we all do. But I know we all do. There is something missing. There is something missing. This isn't, I don't believe this is where we're supposed to be in terms of where we'll always be. I feel like we all feel there's something intrinsically missing and we're separated from something. But we're all separated from something together. And I think that's something beautiful. Even in its darkest moments, if this is where the evil creator God put me, well, I'm so glad I'm not in the bloody Middle East. And I'm so bloody glad I'm not in Africa. Yeah. And I'm so, like, in a tent, living in a hut made of feces. Like, I am one of the lucky ones. Do you know what I mean? I don't live in a shit hut. I live in a house with an internet connection. What is there to be, I think you've got to be grateful for that. And when you're grateful for that, you're anxious because you don't want to lose it. People don't want to die because they don't want to lose what they have, because they love what they have and they're afraid of losing what they have. So there's obviously intrinsic value in this world. And if that's what Yalda Bayoff, the evil god, created, then that's all right then. I don't know what to say. Could have done
I'm right
worse.
there with you, man.
You could have done worse.
I hear you. Wayne, final thoughts?
It's all a matter of perspectives and perceptions, and your perception is your reality. So there, Richard's 100% correct. Do we live in a prison planet? I don't think so, and I don't want to accept that because I see the intrinsic good that does exist, and I don't think that's the original intention of the creator of this place. And although others have mischaracterized this creator as this Yalda Bayoff, this evil creator, I don't see it that way because I personally have a connection with God, with my creator, and I see the beauty in that. We all as human beings have this yearning in our soul to have that connection to our creator, and there's nothing else that could fill that void other than a right relationship with him. So when you have that and you have that spiritual connection, and this is of the utmost importance because this is where the world is going right now. We're coming to a crossroads where we have to make a choice. Are we going to choose the spiritual path or the physical path? And we need to choose that spiritual path if we want to ascend to something greater, to have that greater love that is out there, to have that greater experience, and to elevate ourselves beyond this physical mortal coil in which we exist. Now, those dark powers that run things in this world, they most certainly want to build what Rudolf Steiner calls the eighth sphere, and this is a world devoid of spirit. It's an artificial, synthetic knockoff of what our true destiny as human beings are. They think they could become or build something better if they become the post-human, but there's no spirit in that. It is devoid of soul and spirit, and it is a world of dead entities. It is the reign of dead matter, as Michael Hoffman calls it. So these are the two paths. This is where we're at. We're at a crossroads. We need to each individually make that choice. Are we going to look to the spiritual, or are we going to get stuck in the physical, the prison planet that they want us to be built into, and that is the eighth sphere, as Rudolf Steiner describes it. It's also known to the Hermeticists of old as the world of shells, the world devoid of spirit, or connection to God, the creator, the source. So those are my closing thoughts on all of that, but I do have this immense hope because it's an individual choice. You don't have to go along with their program. That's the good news. You can make that individual choice. Although they may make it uncomfortable for you at times to choose the spiritual path, you can still choose to do that and fully experience what it means to be human.
Right on. This was excellent, gentlemen. Before I let you go, let the audience know where they can find out more about you, starting with Wayne.
All right, I could be found at www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. Also, Richard and I do a bi-monthly broadcast called Synchro Mystic, where we really tear into this stuff in a very deep way. And we've had a pretty good response to all of that. So that could be found on YouTube, and it's also out there on all the different podcast platforms. So you could find us there as well.
Excellent. Richard.
Video work, iconic.com, and I also put some articles on there, and I've a blog or an article, Substack article, blog, whatever you want to call it, Some May Conspire, and you can find me on X at WTAF Rich, or WTAF Rich, which is WTAF's a podcast that we do where me, Gaz, Ike, look at all the stories from the week and kind of laugh at the absurdity of it all and the madness of it all, and it's done really well, but obviously I'm synchronistic with Wayne, so I'm busy all the time making stuff. Got a book coming out in the new year, and Wayne's just finished his new book as well, which I'm looking forward to. So we're always busy. We're always just trying to keep this message out there. So thank you for supporting us and having us on. It's been lovely to meet you.
It's been great to meet you as well. I hope we can do it again soon. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We will talk again on Monday. We'll see y'all all then. Hello, friends. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order.